All right, and welcome to the Gamma Quadrant. So first of all, thank you all for joining me. Really appreciate it. This is our maiden voyage. This is our first foray. We're going to be conducting a session 0 today, so really appreciate all of you guys joining us. In just a moment, I will introduce you to the rest of our gaming crew. They are patiently waiting behind the velvet curtain, so to speak. And I'm really excited to have that group aboard with us today. So without further ado, let's go ahead and kick it over to the players. And there we go. So starting from left to right, we've got JT. JT, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself? Hold on. Left to right. Go ahead, JT.
All right. My name's JT. I have no idea what I'll be playing tonight. I am fairly new to Savage Worlds as well as Fantasy Grounds, but I do run some D&D stuff, and I've played a lot of other RPGs as well. So it's be interesting. It's good times.
So awesome. Great to have you, JT. I guess we'll go with Braden next. Braden, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Okay, so I have limited experience with Savage Worlds, plenty of experience with other RPGs. I'm looking to either play a strong Yeti type, or if necessary, a leadership type character.
Awesome. I think you've alluded to one of our possible character races. So yes, in Savage Worlds, in this setting, there are in fact Yetis. So be ready. Daystar. Daystar, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself? Daystar, not sure if you heard me. You're muted. Sorry. Nope. So we'll get back to you. Go ahead and sort that out. We'll come right back to you. So Gerg, why don't you
Check
go
one,
ahead?
two.
Yeah, there you go. Sorry. Pause, Gerg. Sorry. Daystar, why don't you
Yep.
go ahead?
All right, I got it fixed. I've been role-playing for decades, but this is my first encounter with Savage Worlds. I love the World of Darkness role-playing system, and I play Dungeons and Dragons and a number of other systems, Fate. So I'm looking this time to be more of a support role. I haven't done too much in the support role world, but we'll see how it goes.
Fantastic. Glad to have you. Gerg, why don't you go ahead?
Hey everybody, my name is Greg, and I've been role-playing for a while now. A little bit of experience with Savage Worlds and a lot of experience with Brian as GM. We've been playing these sort of games together for multiple years now, and I'm excited to do this. Not exactly sure what character I'm going to be running, but could be ship engineer or something like that. Is something that first caught my eye. So yeah.
Fantastic. Glad to have you aboard. And last but absolutely not least, Tiderian, you are up. Welcome to the stream. I see you are equally in your, spaceship somewhere in the universe. So why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself to the audience?
Greetings, guys. Welcome. My name's John, but I'm known as T Prime to many. My background is not diverse. I've GM'd sometime about 30 years ago, a 2E game. During that time, we had a lot of fun. Then I didn't really touch tabletop in the sense for the last 30 years. So I got in about 2 months, 3 months, 4 months ago into Fantasy Grounds, playing 5e with JT over there, and we really just been doing some of that, and I kind of just got a hankering for some sci-fi, and saw Savage Worlds seemed to have some already going in that some direction, so I picked it up, and within a matter of 2 days or 3 days of looking for some how does this work and stuff, I found Mega over here, and shamelessly invited myself to his Sunday night game. So that was, well, I saw him actually talking to someone else, and hey, and the guy was like, well, and we waffled. I went right in for it. So, that's how it went.
Well,
Yeah, my background today in Savage World is absolutely. How long have I been here tonight? That's the extent of it. And my character, well, seeing how this isn't like, oh, I'm gonna be a, it's more esoteric. It's like my stats seem like I'm heading towards some sort of a homicidal maniac. Um, Probably a, I guess. I'm not a bounty hunter because I'd probably work for free, but I imagine that it would be more of a killer type. I was a little depressed. I couldn't use both hands here. I couldn't get ambidex. I couldn't get it all in there. But yeah, a shooter guy, guns. I'd like to buy more guns, bigger guns, and trying not to get you guys in too much trouble. But there it is. I'm here, and if you get into trouble, I'll be sure to shoot our way out, because I will be looking for a way out. That's the way I go. All right,
Awesome.
that's me.
Awesome. Really appreciate it. So I think Tiderian got he spent some time ahead of time, and character player proactivity is greatly appreciated. But the intention of this session is really to to help you the viewers and you the players understand what's stuck in here, right? Which is an amazing sci-fi setting. Which is inspired by some cult classics, some movies, TV shows, characters, themes. So so just some things I drew inspiration from for this was like the Aliens franchise, TV shows like The Expanse and Dark Matter and Firefly and Star Trek. Those of you who are familiar with Star Trek might have picked up on. Well, it's over there. There we go. The the name of the campaign that we're going to have, Gamma Quadrant, is from Star Trek. But each one of those things kind of feeds into what I'm hoping is a really awesome sci-fi experience for you guys. There's a whole lot there's a whole lot out there as far as fantasy RPG stuff, and I'm hoping that we can scratch that sci-fi itch for all you guys. So I'm really excited to have you. Thank you a lot for joining me. And let's go ahead and get started, if that's okay with you guys. Before we go, does anybody have any questions before I get into the why we're all here?
I have a disclaimer. My character, and I've looked hard at this, and I've done my research. Most of it on the Deader Society here. So my hindrance is a quirk. And I have a problem with these guys. I hope they're not too prevalent in the game, because I'm really going to have, just a disposition. I'm just not quite comfortable with, eating with them, I guess.
Yeah, and that's fine.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
Laying it out there.
Yeah, no, I totally get it, right? It's an acquired taste, all pun intended. So I'll
well, they're tasty, and, with butter and...
So I'll explain in more detail as we go for those who are not familiar with the last parsec, which is kind of the core setting that this is built around. But obviously there's going to be a whole bunch of home brewing that goes on. There's going to be some customization, and really, as far as I'm concerned, you guys, the players, as well as our viewing audience, really get to steer this. This campaign, right? So there is the opportunity for viewers to interact with the stream, and ultimately, as we get going, we'll define what all those things are. But if there aren't any other questions, I'll get into a couple of basics just so that you guys understand kind of what we're working with. Anybody else? Once, twice, sold.
Okay.
All right. So Savage Worlds. What is Savage Worlds? So Savage Worlds, for those of you that are unfamiliar, right? Aside from having like super awesome logo, which is up there, right? Is a setting agnostic role-playing game system. The concept of Savage Worlds is for it to be fast, furious, and fun. Okay, so what you will notice is there are a couple of concepts that really play into those three kind of key tenets of being fast, furious, and fun. First of all, there's the concept of acing, and so just for those who aren't familiar, right? Traditional D&D or roll, D20 games. You roll a die, you add a modifier, and that ultimately leads to a value, right? In Savage Worlds, I'm getting a little bit of feedback, so if you wouldn't mind, if you're not talking, your mic real quick. But the concept of acing involves rolling a die and getting the highest possible number on that die. So, for example, a D6, you get a 6. So if you get a 6 on a D6, so if you get a 6 on a D6, you actually roll that die again, and you add that number. Right. So the base target number for Savage Worlds is a 4. Right? So 4 is what you're trying to get. And so if you figure, if I'm rolling a D4 and I have a -2 penalty.
Is somebody else having issue audio?
Yeah, I'm definitely hearing the audio feedback. So hang on one second.
Something else must be because I see the indicator still lower.
All right, so interesting. Okay. So
there might be a couple things. Because every time anybody talks, your microphone goes crazy.
Okay, so. Okay, how about now? No? Okay. So, can you guys hear me? Okay. So unfortunately, I hear the feedback. Let me see if I can do that. Okay. So do I still have you guys there?
The issue, I don't think you're right.
Okay. So I apologize. Give me one second, guys. I'm gonna kick over to the Be Right Back screen. We will be right back. All right, guys, we are back. Apologize for that. Tidarian,
I do.
I guess we were having some mic issues.
It was the voice meter.
Ah, okay, got it. So we're sorted out. you know, that's what these first sessions are for. So thank you all for sticking with us. Thank you all for allowing us to sort out that challenge. But I think we are good. So, you know, if we could just confirm from the stream, I think we're looking good from my side. So let's see. Awesome. So thank you guys. So all right, let's get back. Where was I? Okay, so the concept of acing. So the target number for any roll is 4 primarily. Okay, there are going to be some things that are modify that, right? You know, somebody has cover. There's, you know, some environmental condition. You're on an unstable platform. Whatever the situation is, you know, there's a bunch of things that can happen. But primarily you're trying to get a 4. But, you know, so if you think about, you know, on the standard Savage Worlds character sheet, right, there's a skill called untrained, right, or, you know, untrained. So untrained is a D4 minus 2. Well, you say, okay, well, I mean, it's impossible for me to get a 4 on a D4 minus 2. Well, not exactly. So if you roll that D4 minus 2, you get a 4. You roll again, you get a 4, right? You know, ultimately you hit that. Yes, it's challenging, but it's not impossible. The other thing that means is no matter how insignificant a, you know, minion may be, that minion can take you down. Right? So understand, if, you know, if they ultimately have like a D6 for their shooting die, and they, you know, and they wind up rolling like a 37, right? And you know, in damage, that's going to take you down. So, you know, so from that perspective, any encounter is potentially fatal. And that's how it should be, right? You have the chance, or you have the potential to die at every step. Now you can protect yourself. You know, you could be cautious. You could be, you know, you could put yourself in proper situations. But if you take risks, you know, things can happen, right? So that, you know, that's the general disclaimer. Other than that, there's another kind of really big part of Savage Worlds that's a little different from other role-playing games. Maybe those that you're more familiar with. There's the concept of bennies. All right, everybody starts the game. Primarily, I mean, there's some things that can modify this, but everybody starts the game with 3 bennies. All right, and those bennies will allow you to re-roll, you know, a die or a set of dice. In this particular game, because we're trying to use the Adventure Edition rules, you can re-roll your damage with a benny. All right, so primarily, so in the previous edition, the Deluxe Edition, which the majority of what we're going to do is built around, we're rolling in some of the Adventure Edition rules. We're going to continue to roll in the Adventure Edition rules as they become more officially supported through Fantasy Grounds. But you can re-roll. So if you make an attack roll and you just bomb it, or, you know, or you roll a damage roll and it's just pathetic, all ones, right? You drop that benny, tell me, hey, I want to use a benny. Boom, you use that benny. Those bennies are yours. They're your currency. You use them when you want them. So at the start of the game, you're going to have 3. Maybe some of you will have more, depending on, you know, some different things, right? So if I've got an edge or a hindrance, you know, that may change my, you know, the number of bennies that I have. But primarily, you got 3. And you say, okay, well, I can burn through 3 bennies in the first combat. You're absolutely right. You could, right? You know, then, you know, you say to yourself, okay, well, how do I? Mike Dubs, thanks for the follow, man. Appreciate it. So how do you get additional bennies? All right, well, you know, you get additional bennies by playing to your character. You know, playing to your hindrances, playing to your theme, you know, it's I am very generous with the bennies in Savage Worlds, or at least I try to be. And you guys keep me honest, right? You know, so if you know, if you say, hey man, you know, my hindrance is you know, I smoke crack and I've been smoking crack like crazy and I've got no bennies, what's going on? Then cool, you know. But in the heat of the battle, I might not necessarily pick up on a subtle nuance, right? I might not pick up on a, you know, a subtlety that you're trying to play to. That said, I'm going to try to keep the bennies flying, and not only so who can use bennies? right? So let's talk about that real quick. So you guys, as you know, as kind of player characters, are what are called wild cards. All right. So you have the ability to impact the world, right? You are a wild card. Other characters, so some of the bad guys or bad girls or bad creatures or whatever that you're going to encounter are going to be wild cards as well. But those are really just the bosses, more or less. Okay. Primarily, the mooks, the extras. Are just that, right? They're disposable red shirt crewman number 2, right? That are not going to be world shaking, they're relatively insignificant. So what's the difference? Well, a wild card can use bennies, number 1, and an extra only takes 1 wound to kill him. So it's kind of like those who remember, and I still have PTSD from 4E, right? But those of us that still remember 4th edition, the minions only had 1 hit point. You hit them, they're dead, right? That said, a 1 hit point or 1 wound mook can roll, a 37 on his damage die, and goodbye. So now Johnny Redshirt is promoted to first lieutenant and in charge of the engineering department because he managed to take you out in 1 shot. So so let me just pause there for a second because I know I just dumped like a whole bunch on you guys. So do we have any questions about either wild cards and extras, bennies, acing, and any of that just yet? Awesome. Look at that. This class is in session. I hope, I'm seeing the head swell as I talk, right? All right. So here we go. So the next concept that I want to mention is the wild die. All right. So I mentioned wild cards a minute ago. The other thing that wild cards get is they get to roll a wild die. Most of the time, this is going to be a D6, right? So when I make a fighting roll, for example, right? So I'm going to roll my fighting die, which may be a D8 or a D4 or a D12, whatever. And then I'm also going to roll a D6. And I take whichever of those is better. Okay, so if I roll a D8 and a D6, I get a 2 on the D8 and I get a 6 on the D6. Well, guess what? My D6 aced, so I get to roll it again. Now Fantasy Grounds, being as awesome as it is going to do all that for you, right? So there's nothing cooler, in my opinion, right, than watching the dice just roll over and over and over again in Fantasy Grounds when you just ace consistently, right? And then you look down and you're like, man.
Only when we roll.
What's that?
Only when we roll up.
Yes. Yeah. No.
Exploding.
Well, yeah. So I don't wish you guys ill.
Not when you do it.
I'm more of an orchestrator, right? So I don't I don't pull punches. I don't hide anything from you guys. But as far as that stuff goes, yeah, I mean, it's also harrowing though, I'll say, right? Like when you're a player and you see that, that shade, that shadow DM die rolling over and over and over again, you're saying to yourself, oh man, this is going to be bad. But anyway, yeah, Savage Worlds, awesome system. And as I mentioned, right, it's setting agnostic. So we've taken that kind of core rule set, we've laid over top of it a really awesome sci-fi setting, and that's what you guys are going to get. So that said, right, what I'd like to kind of move into is just a little bit of actually, one more quick pause. Are you guys good with just the Savage Worlds overview I've just provided to you?
Yes.
Awesome.
Yep.
So let's talk about the setting, right? So where are we? What are we doing? So as I mentioned, we're using the last parsec as a kind of core to the setting here. And the last parsec, for those of you who don't know, takes place kind of at the birth of faster than light travel. So that said, right, there have been missions that have used STL or slower than light travel for 600, 800 years, whatever. And those missions set out in different directions. And as a result of those missions, right, new planets were colonized, alien species alien species were encountered. And so now you've got, a bunch of mixed races out there, right? So you've got a bunch of different races. I shouldn't say mixed, but a bunch of different races available in the world, right? So, so earlier, a Yeti was mentioned. That's one of them, right? But we'll get into the races here in a minute. But basically, you've also had human settlements in different areas as well. And those human settlements have progressed at different paces, right? So some of them have really, dived into technology and have focused their direction on the the different types of technology. And one of them, for example, is where faster than light drives came from, right? And so there are 3 organizations that have developed faster than light technology. Those 3 organizations, of them, one of them you guys are going to be kind of members of, right? And the name of that organization is called Jump Corp. All right, and Jump Corp uses a beacon-based faster than light technology. And so in order to travel at faster than light speeds, you need 3 things. You need a beacon where you are, you need a beacon somewhere in the middle, and then a beacon at your destination, right? So that triangulates the destination, so you don't inadvertently jump into a star or an asteroid or one of many other things which would be unpleasant to jump into at faster than light speeds. The other 2 organizations out there that have this technology are using different styles of FTL drives. So they're using a warp bubble drive, one of them, and the other one is using kind of a wormhole drive, or at least that's what they call it. The problem with those other systems is they haven't exactly worked out all the kinks. so you guys may be called upon to go, find a group from another one of these organizations and help them out, or at least retrieve what portions of them that you can. So I guess as far as the faster than light technology and the general kind of time frame, anybody have any questions there? I know we talked about it real quick. I mean, you guys have had an opportunity to stew on it, think about it. Does anybody have any questions on the general time frame or faster than light travel in general? Nope. All right, cool.
We'll deal with issues as they come up.
So I guess as we zoom in, all right, we can talk a little bit about the different classes, or let me start with, so in Savage Worlds there's really no concept of class. So that's kind of another thing to get used to. But any race can be any, I guess there are archetypes that are available, which, those are just to help you to create your character. But, you can build, so any race can be any kind of profession, I guess is probably a better way to say it. So if I take a look here, right, so there are a few different races to speak of that might be significant to you, and they subsequently have their own planets. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to post a primer that I've already made available to all of these guys for anybody following the stream who has interest and wants to learn a little bit more about the setting. I'm assuming that you guys have all kind of read that. What I'd like to do is I'd like to just start talking about your perspective on the various different races and where which ones you think you gravitate to. So I'm just going to open up the conversation to the group, and we could just chat at this point. I think I've given a good primer, so So why don't we go ahead and just collaborate on the races, for now. So anybody have one that it seems particularly interesting to them? I mean, obviously human, right? Human has its benefits, right? So, if you think about 5e, right? In 5e, you have the variant human. The variant human gets a feat potentially at first level. I mean, if you take a variant human and don't take the feat, I'd like to have a conversation with you about why you made that decision. But, so...
Yeah, you're dropping out a little bit there, Brian.
Sorry about that.
I'll switch to text that.
So there we go. So that should be better, right? Okay. So in Savage Worlds, the humans get an extra edge, which is kind of their benefit, right? But the other races will all have some edge or some capability that makes it, kind of balance out. So the edges, or so the oh, actually, I didn't talk about edges and hindrances. So the way that you kind of define your character is through edges and hindrances, right? So edges are things you do really well, and hindrances are hindrances, right? Things that hold you back, right? And they could be something like, I mentioned before, the crack addiction, right? Maybe not that significant. So that would be a major, addiction hindrance, right? But you also have the option of selecting something like a minor addiction hindrance, right? Like like you smoke or you drink or you gamble or whatever. Any one of those things could show up as a minor hindrance. But depending on how you play it, right, you could say, well, I got a major hindrance of smoking. I smoke like 8 packs a day and I'm like literally always smoking. So as a result, right, that's going to impact if you're in a situation where you can't smoke, right, you're going to start to get anxious. You're going to start to get nervous. You're going to start to have difficulty, in those situations. And it is pretty damn tough to smoke in a vacuum. I personally haven't tried, but, if you've given that a shot, I'd love to have a conversation with you. So any of you guys had particular interest in one or more races? I heard the Yeti mentioned before, but let's just talk about it.
Well, I've got an interest in being a construct. It's one of the things I was looking at. I think that's going to fit well with my character type.
Yeah. So there are construct / robots. I mean, in this setting, it's construct is more of like
You're cutting out.
Sorry about that. So,
Yep.
Constructs are those they would be your typical like artificial people, right? So like
It's not much better when you lean in, unfortunately.
sorry.
Something's weird with it.
Yeah, it is.
It's like the
It's almost like
quality
the
jumps
microphone's
down.
really far away.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'll try to speak up. Hopefully, you guys can hear me okay. But let's see. So, okay. So how about that? Is that a little bit better?
Yes.
Okay.
A little bit.
All right.
Mhm.
It jumps up and down. Like when it's super good quality, it's great. But when otherwise, it sort of sounds like it's coming out of a tin.
Sure, and that might just be in
Yep.
VC. My mic going to the stream is a little bit different. So yeah, so those guys are. The stream is telling me it sounds good.
Okay.
But anyway, yeah. So constructs. If you think about like David, the artificial person from Aliens, like that is the level of android / robot that's available. Now you may say, well, I'm an earlier model, or I was manufactured for this purpose, right, or that purpose, right, and then and we can flavor that to that degree. So any other races that jump out to you guys?
Yeah, I like the idea of Kalian, the 4-armed race of yeah. 4 arms is pretty nice. They're good with swords, but they're pretty frail. So I'm not sure I would want to go up into sword action with them immediately. But they also make very good like engineers and everything. So that's why I was thinking about it.
You got 4 arms. You got 4 guns.
Yeah, yeah. That's. I mean,
Yeah,
it is possible.
ambidextrous. You know.
Yeah, exactly. Quadrant-extrous.
Yeah, it's. I was like, you know.
Whatever.
You'd have to take the ambidextrous edge twice. No, I'm just kidding. So, so yeah, no, the Kyrians Callians are definitely you know, something to take a look at. So additionally, right? So you've got the Rakashans, which are so those are familiar. Those of you that are familiar with D&D may remember the Rakshasa, which are basically like the feline, you know, maybe like kind of tiger people, you know, and so they're available. The Saurians are lizard people. Florins are like plant people. And I know we talked a little bit about the Deaders, but I'd like to talk a little bit about them real quick. So in this setting, there's a race of parasitic kind of creatures who need need a human host or need a humanoid host to live. And what they do is they offer money, basically, to the living, that when they die, they would inhabit their bodies and live on. And so they are kind of like, you know, the undead, I guess.
There's no point in them.
so each has
we
their
will
own.
we will barbecue them like shrimp on a barbecue.
Hey, look.
Yeah.
Free transactions.
So I mean, if
I
you're
don't
in a
need
pinch,
rations.
you know, if you're in a
That's all I'm
pinch
saying.
financially, you know, you really need that new, you know, laser blaster, right? You know, maybe you sign a deal, you know.
No.
So
I'm like Sigourney Weaver holding the damn thing as I fall into the lava. I'm done. You know, no way. If I'm a pilot, I'm driving it into the sun. What do you say?
awesome. So let's see. Oh,
Matter of fact, if I take a contract, I'm choosing Death Wish.
all right.
That just means you want to be a deader quicker. That's what I
Oh,
do.
wait.
So and then I guess, you know, mentioned earlier was Yeti, right? You know, Yeti are, you know, I think the you know, the traditional kind of you know, view of a Yeti is probably accurate, and you know, we'll talk about that if anybody actually wants to play a Yeti. But basically white fur, you know, large.
Starting to break out a lot now.
Yeah, so so there we go. So what do you guys think? You know, we've talked a little bit about the races. What do you guys feel like you want to play?
I was leaning on either a leadership type character or a Yeti who would fill some kind of security guard role.
Okay. Yeah. No. I mean, it's definitely doable.
Who says a Yeti can't be a leader?
Oh no, I mean totally could, right? I mean, you know, a Yeti captain. I mean, so there, you know, so understand, you know, a lot of this is flavor, right? And in terms of the general, you know, state of your characters, I mean, you're all going to be novices. You're fresh out of, you know, Jump Corp training. We'll talk kind of toward the end of this session about how the group meshes together, but you know, but we got to create characters first. Right. So, you know, so we won't necessarily be able to say, well, hey, Bob knows Steve because, you know, Bob and Steve did blah, blah, blah. Well, you know, if Bob is a Deader and Steve is Tiderian's character, well, then guess what? That whole theme goes right out the window. Right. So, so let's just firm it up. You know, I know you guys already have sheets open. You know, fire away with the questions that you got.
Just so y'all know, I like spent most of the day making different characters, so I'm kind of in a field spot of it, like a pilot, a leader, a big brute, scion. So whatever y'all want to do, if somebody feels strong about something, feel free. I'll feel.
And remember that the archetypes are out there.
Yeah.
So
Would somebody,
go ahead.
you know, kind of thinking like a sort of Scotty type character, who would be an engineer who would help out with the you know, faster than light calculations and everything like that.
So
Would that just be pilot, or what sort of archetype would that be?
well, so let me take a look. So I would say that's probably going to be probably. We might have to make that character, but it would, you know, be focused on like the repair skill. You know, I don't necessarily see
Science officer.
Yeah, maybe a science officer or something like that, or a scientist, something like that.
You know, what archetypes do we specifically need? Because
you don't need an archetype. You know.
Well, somebody's going to need to make the rolls to fly the ship. Is my point.
Yeah. So actually, great point. Okay. So let me tell you what a standard or typical kind of jump corp team would consist of. Okay. And this is very loose, right? You guys can manipulate it however you want. But a traditional jump corp team would have, you know, a team leader, you know, if only in name, right, who would be kind of the, you know, the person that, you know, that handles a lot of the administrative stuff, would be kind of the face, I guess, of the group. You'd have an engineer of some type, maybe more than one. You'd have someone who is kind of the ship's doctor slash, you know, maybe a backup, you know, engineer or a backup scientist. Somebody, so the primary engineer and the medical engineer would focus on, like if you go on a mission to where you have to survey a planet, right? One of them would focus on like the geology of the planet, the, you know, the characteristics of the planet. Another one would focus on the habitability or the life that exists on the planet, right? So, yeah. So from that perspective, I would say, so you've got, you know, a face or a pilot kind of character, or sorry, not pilot. So a face or a leader kind of character, an engineer, a medical officer, you know, a pilot, right? And then any one of those also should also be the kind of the, you know, the weapons engineer. So one of those engineers, either the medical officer or the engineer, should also be kind of the weapons specialist, right? So maybe the ship's engineer is also proficient in explosives and firearms and things like that, right? You know, kind of a marksman, but also has some repair skill. But, you know, but in a 5-man crew, yeah, that's pretty much what you would get. So why don't you guys talk about what of those roles you guys gravitate to?
Well, the robot that I'm envisioning is going to be hands off as far as harming people, so a medical officer would fit right with my character's personality.
All right, that sounds good.
My guy could definitely be sort of an engineer slash weapons specialist. With the swords and the forearms, it seems like they could have a lot of fun with various explosives, whatever.
Okay, so I think we got a science officer, an engineer. What about the rest of you guys?
I'm feeling like I'm doing some frontline, I guess. Not so much, you know, I'm into shooting. I could do some piloting, but I could also do some covert, like stealth, pick locks. So I'm probably more of a roguish.
Sure. Yeah. So I mean, there's definitely there's definitely going to be overlap, right? So the characters can be kind of generalized enough to where there's some overlap, you know, between them. Because, you know, obviously you don't want only one person that knows how to fly the ship, right? Otherwise, that person dies, and guess what? You're stuck on that rock or wherever you are until somebody comes picks you up. You know, that's not a good spot to be in. Same with the with the medical, right? You're gonna want somebody who can at least do field medicine, a little triage, something like that, right? Repairing. If the radio goes out and the engineer's dead, well, guess what? You're stuck. So you'll want to make sure that you have someone or someones with overlapping skill sets. But you really want somebody to be good at each of those skills. Yeah, and in the chat, Venerek mentions, you guys always have the opportunity to do an untrained roll. And an untrained roll, again, it's a D4 minus 2. It's not impossible, right? But you can absolutely try any type of skill, even if you don't pick it on your character sheet. So there you go. And because you get the wild die, the D6, it's even kind of more plausible that you would get it. So I guess as you guys are working through your sheets, I mean, if you have questions, I'm happy to answer them. Let's just go ahead and dive into it. What I'd like you to do is I'd like you guys all to collaborate on your character concept and how you think you fit in the world.
No.
Or not. Or we could all sit there and listen to music.
Yeah, so, like I said, I made several, so like I said, I'll feel, but I made a big Aurochs, brute that just runs in and smashes thing and goes berserk. I made a face-type character that is, basically just there for charisma, a scion, a team leader. I just kind of played around with character builds, and I'm fine doing any of those. Didn't really do a science officer, like an engineer, but I figured the big brute Aurochs, and part of being strong, he can repair mechanical stuff. You wouldn't want to give him your iPad, but if it's like a broken engine, he can grab parts and tools and fix it. But that's kind of what I was looking at today.
Yeah. Okay. So Greg, what are you thinking? I mean, I know you talked a little bit. I mean, why don't you flesh out your character a little bit more?
Sure. I mean, I'm looking at piloting, and I'm looking at sort of. It's kind of tough because I kind of want to do a lot of things. Just looking at everything, I'm like, oh man, I want to do that. I want to do that. So, if we don't, it's probably going to be sort of science knowledge with a little bit of repair, and then I think explosives will be really useful in certain situations, and I want to have something to do with those. And yeah, beyond that, it's mostly knowledge-based kind of things, but still the ability to defend myself and maybe use explosives. That's sort of the main specialty.
Okay.
Be interesting. Yeah.
All right. So I guess Daystar, we haven't heard from you so much around your character concept. Why don't you talk through a little bit what you're thinking?
Well, so I'm looking to make an oversized, cumbersome robot jukebox. Basically, he's going to be type Bard style. He doesn't like. He likes violence, but he doesn't like harming. He can't like harming things. It goes against his code. Even though he enjoys it, he can't physically harm people. And so he's going to go in, interrupt people. He's going to focus on things like talking things out, disrupting things, and also he can heal if necessary.
Yeah, that sounds cool. And then maybe provide some motivation through some, epic tunes, right?
Yeah, you bet.
All right. Yeah, there's nothing like a beatbox robot. When you're in the throes of combat. So, Tiderian, I know you sent over some information. It looks like your character's pretty well fleshed out. You want to give the audience and the rest of the group just a little bit more around your theme?
Yeah. Okay. My character is, I guess, a bounty hunter person. I'm not sure. It's his first job, but his edges as a human would be he's alert, He's quick to sense danger, and when he's not actually cleaning his weapons, he's working on his martial arts skills. So he's usually tries to stay on the edge, and for that, he's made enemies along the way, and that's one of his minor hindrances. Is he might have some trouble running around looking for him. He also has a very dislike for the Paristine debtor. The whole concept. I'm not sure I even agree with people who aren't debtors but yet align with them, and even shun people who maybe willingly, or I would say if they're willing to sell, I'm reluctant to work with them. If they were in poverty and in a position and being taken advantage of, which most of these Paristines are doing to these poor people, I do stand that this is a quirk. Now, actually, by the play of it, it sounds like it should be a major for me, but quite frankly, it's just how it goes. So, my major hindrance is, I'm not quite sure I have a code of honor, is while I am experienced in killing and how to harm, I'm not interested in killing unless necessary. And I think that's something that I don't torture, I don't kill prisoners. Yeah, I've never been into that. But if it's a necessity, and if it's me or them, or one of you guys, they're done. As a human, I'm adaptable, so I hope to stay young. I'm a 30-year-old male who's been training for combat most of my life. My skills, well, I've picked them up along the way. I'm able to climb. It's part of my routine and exercise. And fighting, obviously. It's a skill I practice every day. Also, in my alertness and danger senses, I'm quick to notice things. And I'm also able to persuade people occasionally to do what I need, or actually provide information if necessary. Shooting is my primary skill. I'm quick to work with weapons. I specialize in hand weapons, and usually can find one strapped to my side. I also have stealth. I'm known to be able to be quiet and observe my surroundings before making a reaction. And I'm pretty streetwise. It's necessary in my line of work. And sometimes when you're out looking for your prey, you may have to work with unsavory characters. And occasionally, when you can't get what you need from other people, you might have to get into what you need. So sometimes I'm useful for lockpicking. And those are, yeah, those are my current things. Not very strong, but I'm currently pretty average in everything else, and a little bit better in my agility. So that's what makes me a little quicker on everything and on the draw.
Cool. So, so I think, you know, clearly he's really kind of fleshed out his character quite a bit. What I'd like to do is I'd like for, you know, the rest of you guys just to be, you know, kind of thinking with the same type of, you know, of mentality. I think I hear some of that stuff, and what I'd like to do is I'd like to move to kind of a Q&A section, to where, you know, as you guys are fleshing out your characters, I can answer any, you know, character creation questions that you may have, or setting specific questions. But really, I'd like that to be kind of real collaborative amongst the group. So does anybody have any questions about, you know, their character as they're starting to build it out, or they just need some help, you know, creating a Savage Worlds character for the first time? You know, because I know some of you guys are pretty new to it. I mean, I've given you a bunch of information, but, you know, what can I help you with?
We're new, but I think we're quick studies, so we've been looking at it this week quite a bit, so I think we pretty much got how to do it. But David, you talked about having,
well, we've been doing drills
having a
all
character,
week.
For like a Yeti or something. Are you pretty set on like kind of that role?
Uh,
Mechanic Yeti.
I like the Yeti concept. The profession can change.
Okay.
I definitely like the race.
And Daystar badge, you got the like a medic robot, but did a lot of social skills as well, right? That's what you were looking at.
Yeah, that's kind of the idea. Is that he goes into combat without actually like being in combat. He talks his way through things. He appeases people whenever he needs to, and he irritates people whenever he really wants to.
Okay. And you said I don't want to call you by the name. Gary? No, Greg.
Gerd.
Greg.
So what you want to
Gerd. Yeah, Greg.
Okay.
Either way.
Because I see a different name than what's on the stream, so I don't want to call something wrong.
No.
You said you were looking at like a mechanic with your forearm guy. Is that right?
Yeah, and
Okay.
I've found some interesting things on throwing, and I'd be able to throw a bunch of things at the same time. So I was thinking, that you could have a lot of fun with figuring out things to do with that. I mean, personality-wise, I don't see too much animosity between this race and the other races, and I don't think he would be sort of naturally that aggressive. He would probably feel very at home in the engine room or something like that as things go on, and also being pretty good with, they have fast minds and everything like that, and he'd be definitely taking advantage of that. But in terms of sort of like when it comes to things with the debtors, he would probably say, well, not really the political type, not really one to get himself in the middle of those kind of situations. Just sort of preferring to be with his, math and his things.
All right. And T Prime, you're talking basically you're almost like a security officer. I mean, you're spend your days learning how to kill people, but don't want to kill them.
Don't call me Francis.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so I mean, those three sound pretty set. You like the Yeti, so with the roles that they said, you think you know what you want to do with your Yeti, or whatever.
If you wanted to do a combat version, then I could steer the Yeti towards some leadership.
I mean, there's nothing wrong with having more combat. I'm just trying to figure out where I'm going to go, since I'm feeling right now I'm leaning toward pilot, because no one's really said anything about being a pilot.
I gave myself a D8 in piloting, just figured sort of the engineer of the ship should.
I'm a backup, like a 4, so I'm emergency pilot.
So I can be the pilot. I have a D8 in it. So if you want to go full face, leader face, I think that would be very good for us.
JT.
Okay, so I have two different when I created characters, I created a face character that was just like the guy that would be charismatic, and then I created a team leader, so I think I could try to combine those and maybe come somewhere in the middle and be
sure, there's a lot of overlap.
Like a captain and stuff, so. So yeah, so team leader / face with a engineering pilot, forearmed, a mechanic construct, a human assassin, and a Yeti.
Crewman, brawler.
Supply officer.
Just all around.
Yeah,
just
actually, I like
Yeti,
that.
full stop. Like, that's it. He's just a Yeti. Like,
Yes,
so who's
I'm
that guy?
acquisitions.
He's just a Yeti. And they're like, oh, okay, yeah, got
You
it.
could be public relations.
There you go.
Yeah.
Bum, 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 bum.
I'm logistics and the cook.
There
I
you
think
go.
like Gilligan's Island, we need a professor.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, cook.
Yeah.
I like that too.
Yeah, he could be professor, cook. He could be all those things.
Professor Cook is his name now.
Professor Cook.
All right. So all right. So it sounds like we've got our group kind of starting to take shape, and that's great. So let me see if I can give you guys a little bit more context on what we're gonna have going on when we get started. So I mentioned you guys are gonna be basically fresh out of training, right? So you've all joined Jump Corp for a reason, right? What I'd like to do is I'd like to go through and have each one of you talk about what that reason might be. Like what brought you to Jump Corp? Because you've each got professions. You could be doing something else, but ultimately you chose to be here. So what brought you to Jump Corp? So I guess JT, why don't you start us off?
Well, I don't know, because I'm combining things. So I'd rather not go first, because this guy's kind of developing as I think. Yeah, go ahead, T. Brian.
I have a reason to be in Jump Corps at the moment, due to the enemy that I may have situation. I'm moving over. Jump Corps was able to get me out of the system where I need to go. So just to get out. That was the reason I got into Jump Corps at the time, and that's why I'm here currently. So all should help you.
Yeah, no, that will. So
bennies are coming already, huh?
Yeah. Unfortunately, no bennies. Well, so the stock bennies will be issued at the end of session 0, but when we start getting going, then yes, we'll those kind of things will definitely play into the bennies. So Gerg, why don't you go ahead and tell us what brought you to Jump Corp?
Well, from what I can tell, Jump Corp is the only company with the technology required to do this kind of stuff, right? Since it's so new. Like they'll be pretty cutting edge, if I'm right.
No, so there are other choices, right? So there are like I mentioned, there are 3 organizations that have faster than light travel. What you've read, right? Jump Corp is the furthest along in terms of their technology is the safest to use. That you're less likely to wind up incinerated as part of a star because you come out of hyperspace, like within 3 meters of a star's surface. So that probably had some something to do with it, but that's up to you.
Yeah. Well, growing up, I probably would have had just sort of drawn to the technology, and I would have wanted to go somewhere where I'd be able to mess around with this kind of stuff and be able to learn as much as I can about it, because those kind of things sort of fascinate me, and just sort of the learning about everything that I can, and actually being there to just be closer to them and learn more about what makes them tick would be all the motivation that I needed to sign up for whatever dangerous mission they wanted me to do, as long as they could get me on one of those ships.
All right. Yep, sounds good. All right, so Braden, what about you? What brought the Yeti to Jump Corp?
Well, the Yeti have, as a race, they've kind of left the planet behind, other than for procreation purposes. So that's in keeping with generally what the race is all about these days. They're a newcomer to the stars as well. They didn't develop the technology; humans brought it to them. So that's why they're a little low tech as a race. And so my version of the Yeti is a being that leaves the planet like most of his kind, and chose Jump just because it's the biggest player in the galaxy.
All right. Yeah, makes sense. Daystar, I know you mentioned a minute ago, so I replied to your text, but
yep.
Okay, so what brought your character to Jump Corp?
I am owned by them.
Oh,
They
okay.
told me, hey, go to this ship. I said, will do.
It's like beatbox. So I will say that the concept does inspire the potential for bennies. If there is an epic beatbox session, damn, I can't even say it.
No.
If there is an epic beatbox session, then that might result in some bennies being handed out. But obviously, it would need to be relevant. So, JT, have you come back around to your Y Jump Corp?
Sure. So I'm going to be a charismatic character. So I'm going with a face. I think I'm leaning toward picking the double edge. But now that I'm a commander, we talked a little earlier about one concept that's a little bit spread, I think, with the noble edge. But I like the idea, I'm charismatic, and with the noble, maybe I have family that's like execs, but I'm not really feeling the whole country club life, and I'd rather not be around it. So kind of a little bit of a black sheep of the family. Use my charisma to kind of skate through the recruitment phase and boot camp, and landed a leadership position, and I may or may not know what I'm doing with the crew. So we'll see.
Well, I mean, you would be a new officer to the crew, so anyone who's been in the military is familiar with that, second lieutenant, fresh out of OCS, or OCS, at least they got a chance of knowing something, but fresh out of the academy, has difficulty disseminating elbows and rear ends. So yeah, no, definitely, a solid concept. So
start out more face, and then as we build, I don't know how progression works so much in Savage Worlds. I really haven't looked at that, but as we progress, move into that leadership, those leadership edges and stuff. Starting out mainly charismatic.
Yeah. So let me talk about character progression. So basically, you're going to get a number of experience points, I guess we could call them that, which is associated with what we accomplish in a session, right? So you guys are really going to drive the sessions, right? And so, each session will result in a certain amount of points being issued to the players, all right? An advance comes after 5 points. Most adventures or most sessions, you'll earn, 2 to 3, sometimes more points based on what you've accomplished. There's also there are also going to be certain kind of milestone events, which will add more points to the to the pool. But after 5 points, you earn an advance. Okay, and so at an advance, you get to do some cool stuff. You get to increase some stats. You get to take an edge, and we can talk about that as it relates to your individual characters. And there's decisions to be made. You can also take some skills. So it results in some points that you get to use. But we'll talk about that when it happens. But you guys are all starting basically at 0. So I would imagine after a couple of sessions, you guys will get your first advance, and then we'll just talk about, how we advance and what, what you can do with that advance. And so, 5 points, and then I think the first, when you go from novice to seasoned, is 20 points. So then we're in a different tier, right? And then we go from seasoned to expert, and then from expert to heroic, basically. And so each one of those is kind of a 20 point scale. So that's basically the gist of how advancement works. So I would imagine after our first two actual live sessions, we'll be talking advance. So it should be happening at a fairly frequent clip, right? Which if you're familiar with other games, you kind of you may move at a similar pace, but basically you're going to wind up being able to take new skills, take new edges, things like that at a pretty good pace. So that said, I mean, how'd you guys come together? and we'll recap this just for those watching today. Again, we appreciate it. This is really session 0, but we'll recap this, or we'll start off with just a brief kind of summary of who each character is and how they all kind of came together. But let's talk about how you guys came together, right? I mean, I think we know how Daystar got here. He was assigned to the crew. But the rest of you, I mean, what how did you wind up here?
This ship is heading out. I'm leaving this area.
I just got called with one of the other prominent country club members' daughter, and figured it would be a good idea to take a little break and captain this ship on out of here. Maybe out of sight, out of mind for a little bit.
All right. Anybody else?
I saw the ad for a cook.
All right. Yeah. I mean, so that makes sense. What about you, Gerd? What?
Probably similar. I'd have to send in an application for it and everything like that.
Sure. Well, so I guess just so I'm just being a little bit more clear, right? I'm not necessarily talking about how you wound up with Jump Corp. I'm talking about like how your character, like, were you at the top of your class, the bottom of your class, the middle of your class? Was is this a crew of misfits, or is it a crew of rock stars, or I mean, what were the things that would have caused
Motley,
the minds that be to say, yep, this is the right group to put together?
So as the leader, my leadership style would be very loose as far as professional. So, don't mind drinking with the crew, hanging with the enlisted, gambling, all good. So we probably wouldn't be the prize of Jump Corps, but we get the job done, and that's what's important.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, to some extent, I imagine the captain would assemble his crew so that JT selected us from the portfolio available to Jump Corps officers.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think the only one that might,
Okay.
that might differ would be, unless you said you were impartial to the particular artificial that was assigned to the ship, right? So, like, did you specifically pick the B-Box, medical officer because you thought he was, epically cool? Or did you say, I don't care,
Well,
just assign this guy?
Part of his beatbox programming was useful during our epic parties in Jump Corps boot camp. So and all the other ones shunned him because he's a little bigger. He's a big boy.
And I will say that proficiency-wise, my bell curve for all my classmates is a flat line. I'm exactly as good as all of my classmates.
Nice. I would have probably been, academically
I did
good.
that out of kindness.
Would have, talking back to, professors and leaders and whatever like that, so they wouldn't have enjoyed that too much. And so maybe I was sort of shuffled around. They, said, hey, why don't you look at this sort of backwater friggin' place where you might be able to find a team where we won't have to talk to you anymore.
Yeah, in military circles, right? Like, I don't know. So I was in the military, for those that didn't know, right? But anyway, a lot of the groups are arranged kind of, using the military alphabet, right? So you have Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, Delta, Echo, Foxtrot. So Greg was kind of whiskey through Zulu, in terms of, squad he was on. And so, so they had a hard time, I guess, finding the right fit. And so I would say maybe that kind of inspired you, JT, to where you said, hey man, I know this is, this is basically a turd, but I'm going to polish it up and see if it's a diamond. I don't know. Would that summarize your decision-making process on the medical officer? Or actually, let me throw another concept at you. The concept of bones from Star Trek, right? So Bones, you know, if you saw the reboots, right? He was, you know, he was basically a drunk. You know, he wound up on the transport accidentally, and befriended James T. Kirk, right? So maybe, you know, maybe JT, you were out at a bar one night. You see Gerg there with his medical uniform on, putting down the, you know, the RX whiskeys, and you say to yourself, well, that's a guy. That's the kind of medical officer that I need.
Yeah, whichever fit, like he would feel more comfortable with that. I like all of those ideas.
So Gerg, what do you think, man? Which one's you?
Well, you said medical officer. I'm assuming the bot is the medical officer.
Oh, sorry, I meant engineer.
Right?
I apologize.
No,
I meant engineer.
You're right. I didn't take anything to do with medicine.
Yeah, no, I
And
meant
so
engineer.
Greg's doing engineering, so he's fixing stuff up just fine. He just has a smart mouth, and which is hilarious. And so, yeah, I want him on my team because that man can party.
All right.
I mean, I can double fist it. He can quadra fist it. So
Yeah, that is a skill.
I was also when I was in education, there was a very popular, in my character backstory, there was a very popular like pilot shoot 'em up video game, and I got like just insanely good at it and beat all the records and whatever.
Hell, you're a good bartender too.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, 4 arms. You can make a Long Island iced tea in like 5 seconds.
You know how many olives you can put in? I mean,
4. Yeah. Pretty fun.
That is a lot of olives.
It's a lot of olives.
No, but
well done.
I have an edge that allows me to shoot more often when piloting or driving. So I mean, I, you know, sort of have that ace pilot thing about me, even though I'm kind of like reserved and a little frail. Other than that, that's kind of when I start trash talking and everything like that.
So let's talk about you know, the weapons, right? Which of you guys is gonna? I mean, I guess I would naturally gravitate towards Gerg, I guess, being the, you know, the keeper of the weapons or the ships.
I got weapons.
Oh, you got weapons?
I got guns in here.
Okay.
All right. To be honest, my current loadout at a measly $500 is my Colt 1911 ACP 45 caliber semi-automatic. It's a good thing getting soft targets. 45 calibers has got a lot of stopping power.
At
That's
this
basically what
point
it is.
in
Semi-automatic,
history,
it's better than the revolver, which is the peacemaker. 6 rounds, 7 rounds. That 7th round will come in handy. Let me tell you.
well, I mean, in you know, in the timeline, I mean, that thing might, you know, is equivalent to a modern day, you know, musket, right? You know, in terms of technology, but
Yeah.
but it may hold some you know, some reverence, right? It may be something to where you say, oh, okay,
No, blaster's just too expensive.
so it may be something to where you say, yeah, you know, it looks like
'Cause-
Savage Worlds just crashed, or maybe didn't. I don't know. We'll see. No?
Still up for me.
Oh, okay. So,
Yeah, I want to get my eyes are on a nice blaster pistol.
Oh, never mind.
Okay. Well, so what I was saying is, it might be like a family heirloom, or it might be something that like has some significance to you. So think about that a
Yes.
little bit.
Yes, it does. It's got pearl handles.
Yeah. Okay.
It was passed down from my great grandfather George.
And during qualifying, we were supposed to use these like laser pistols that don't actually harm the targets. And T Prime snuck in his like slug thrower, got trouble, and you know, I like that. How about that? How do you like
Yeah.
that, T Prime? Does that fit?
Yeah.
Hey, Jimmy,
Sneaking
the
in your own
catch-
personal weapons instead of using their simulated weapons. It
Simulated.
didn't feel right
Well,
during training.
I think we needed to raise the bar.
Exactly.
It was an unrealistic approach.
How these
to
guys
training.
How these guys gonna know how to shoot a real gun?
No, how they
Shooting
gonna know how it
simulated
feels
gun.
when they're shot. You know.
Exactly.
There's a. Besides, I was handing out Purple Hearts for everyone.
All over the place.
That's it. No, they should get them after the chow line. Hand them out at the end of that.
Thanks for the host, Marbania. Appreciate it. Thank you. So yeah, so I'm bringing the server back up. I'm not sure what exactly happened there, but that's cool. We'll sort it out.
Because I didn't get my laser gun.
Charging your laser.
I need a laser gun.
Pew pew.
I'm here for the laser guns. Yep, that's right. Pew pews. Yeah.
Okay, so all right.
But I did get body armor.
So Braden 101, thanks for the follow. Appreciate it. So yeah, as far as equipment, I mean, we can start diving into equipment now. So standard issue. So the server's back up for anybody who didn't realize, but standard issue, you're going to get a flechette pistol, which we talked about before, which is a particular type of pistol that's designed for operating in space and on ships. It is a soft, is good against soft targets, but it will not, pierce the hull, which can be pretty bad on a spaceship if you're not aware. Aside from that, you also get a space suit issued to you, a Jump Corp standard space suit. But and then in terms of like mundane equipment, I mean, really, I'll leave that up to you guys. The engineer types will also get a handheld computer, and that handheld computer can be used to interface with the ship, or used for medical triage purposes, right? So for those of you that are of engineering types, the captain / leader will also get a handheld. That handheld is a little limited in its use, but under the right circumstances can be used to control the ship and also perform some general functions. But primarily it's kind of reserved for command comms, right? So that would be your link to Jump Corp in general. And when you're shipboard, you would connect your handheld computer with the ship's AI or the ship's computer, and you would use that as an interface to controlling ship-based functions. So any questions on that? For the rest of you guys, everybody gets a comm link, which is basically an earpiece that'll allow you to communicate with the rest of the crew in space or in circumstances where you are you're not able to talk verbally. So like, for example, you would put your comm link in before you put your helmet on and your spacesuit. It's basically just a little earpiece. You guys could set it all on the same channel, and that would allow you to communicate just over radio frequency. You could also use separate channels if you are inclined to do so. So, the device has the ability of operating on 12 channels. So, for example, if you want to have two different teams, on channel 1 and channel 2, whatever, then that's something you just need to let me know about.
Server's down again, by the way.
Yeah, I'm looking into that. So as far as like mundane equipment, so does everybody understand the kind of the starting kit? Any questions there?
I'm sure I'll have some questions eventually on
Pretty
we
clear.
can deal with the handhelds and stuff. But yeah, for the most part, I think good enough to start, I think.
Okay. All right, cool. So the server will be back up in a second.
Yeah.
But
Take a break.
Guess we could, if any. I mean, so we're really loose, tonight. So if you got to step away for a minute, just go ahead and step away. I mean, obviously when we're in the thick of it, obviously it wouldn't make sense for us to, have a person step away in the middle of combat. But yeah, if you got to step away for bio or a drink or whatever, feel free. Go ahead.
Be right back.
I'm gonna try this. Hey! It's a cool little fade out.
Oh, what was that at?
Oh, there's a party going on somewhere.
Down
Oh.
at the bottom of the VC call interface thing is a mute, unmute.
Oh,
Wow.
nice.
Everybody's fading out.
Doodle-doo, doodle-doo.
So actually, while everybody's sorting out the bio stuff, what I'll do is I'll go ahead and kick it back to the GM screen. What I'd like to do, so we'll go ahead and take a break. So why don't you guys go ahead and step away, do what you got to do. I will be right back to you guys.
Sounds good.
All right, so here we are in the uppy closey, if you will. I'd like to interface with the chat now, and those of you guys that are watching. So I'd really like to get some feedback on what you think so far of our look, our group. Anybody that's got, everybody's got any questions or comments about it, or anything that they want to try to ask about the Gamma Quadrant. I know we're doing a session 0 tonight, but I want to make sure that those of you that are out there in Streamland get the opportunity to ask any questions that you may have. So thanks, Lucky Me. Yeah, it's I'm eager to get into the gameplay too. I just wanted to make sure that we gave our viewers, like you guys, the opportunity to really understand the setting, and understand the character concepts and be part of the character creation process, because I'm hopeful that you guys are going to laugh and cry and and just be part of this adventure. So I appreciate the great feedback, Marbella. I worked on it. I like it. Here, I can kind of get out of the way. There's a little space dock back there. so yeah. No, I appreciate it, guys. Anybody have any questions on the setting or what we're gonna do? And again, we're just on a quick little break here. So I didn't have to go anywhere, so I figured I'd stick around and talk to you guys while the rest of the group is taking a quick bio break. We're gonna run for about another maybe hour and a half, for those of you that are looking for a time check at this point. Thank you, RBR. I appreciate it. There's a lot of work went into it, and yeah. No, Baboonsky, we're playing Savage Worlds, and the last parsec setting, and there's a lot of customization that's gone into it, and I mentioned kind of at the outset where I'm inspired by thanks C2 Gaming or C2X. Yeah, ask any questions for sure. So I'm inspired for this particular setting through TV shows like let's see, like obviously Star Trek a little bit, but I would say Dark Matter, The Expanse, Firefly, kind of shows like that. And we're playing Savage Worlds for those of you guys that don't know. And in terms of Luck Me, the differences is the Savage World system plays real fast, number one, and it's got kind of some unique Starship Troopers is another one I'm influenced by. Aliens is another one I'm influenced by, but and Battlestar Galactica, man, you guys are nailing it. So you won't see a lot of D20 rolls. A lot of time you might not see any D20 rolls in an entire session of Savage Worlds. One of the main differences is that the core attributes and skills are based on a die type instead of like a score, right? So so in D&D, for example, like your strength may be a 16, right, which equals a +2, right? In Savage Worlds, your strength may be a D4, a D6, a D8, a D10, a D12, right? And so when you make a strength-based check, that strength-based check uses that die type plus your wild die, which in most cases is a d6. And then one of the coolest things about Savage Worlds is that those dice can ace or explode, as it's referred to. So basically, if you roll the highest number on that die, you get to re-roll it and add that to the result, right? So if you roll a d6 and you roll a 6, you get to add it. So now you got a 12. Well, if you you roll a d6, you get a 6. You roll again, you get another 6. Now you get a 12. You roll again, you get another 6. Now you get an 18. So I've seen a bunch of Felrastier, yes, someone is going to die, most likely. But space is a dangerous place, you know. But I've seen more than a few times where like just Joe average bad guy, not the big bad or whatever, rolls dice and it aces a bunch of times, and all of a sudden, boom, critical story member, is down. So I really love Savage Worlds. Like I said, there are a couple other aspects that make it really unique. So there's the concept of chases and dramatic tasks and things like that. And so it's really a great fun game. And for those of you that haven't checked it out yet, go ahead and give it a look. I mean, it's super cheap to pick up the core rules. There was recently just a new version released. That new version is called the Adventure Edition. There was just a Kickstarter. But the Deluxe Edition is still viable. We're primarily playing Deluxe Edition rules here because that's what's fully integrated with Fantasy Grounds. But ultimately, we'll wind up bringing in the Adventure Edition as we get a little bit closer. So I think the group is kind of getting set. We should be ready to kind of kick back. Yep, absolutely. So I'm going to go ahead and kick back to the team. I think the break is over, but really appreciate the interaction, guys. We're going to dive back into it, and I'll see you on the other side. All right, and we are back. Looks like I caught Greg in the middle of some pizza. Everybody's looking around, so good stuff. So, welcome back. C2X, what? I'm sorry, I missed the question. I see the redemption. What was the question? Okay, I'll wait to see. But anyway, so we're back into it. So let's talk equipment. So some of the things that you're gonna need. And C2X Gaming, that's what I thought. But just wanted to make sure if you actually had a question that you got the opportunity to ask it. So, so in terms of mundane items, I mean, there's just there's a few things that you're going to want to make sure you bring with you. You're going to want to make sure that you've got some some food. You're going to want to make sure that you've got tools of the trade, right? So like if you are a medical robot, for example, you'll want a Mediscanner, right? You'll want some Medigel, right? So so read about those things. If you're an engineer, you're going to want tools, so as far as the mundane items are concerned, I mean, why don't you guys take a quick look through there and see? I mean, I know Tiderian, you fleshed out your character pretty good. Is there anything that that you looked at, you had any questions about, or anything that I could sort out?
I want my laser.
Yeah.
It's coming. That's what progression is for. Alright. Like I said, me and JT and Darkstar too, we were drilling this week for making characters, so.
get
All
that
right.
password again.
Okay. So everybody should be able to get back in. I don't know if anybody's is having any challenges. I see everybody connecting. So yeah. So looking through. It's probably a little bit early for more significant weapons. We might need to just start out now. When and if you're issued a ship, that ship will have an arsenal that's assigned to it. So we can talk about what that includes, but what you have personally is basically what you've been issued. So I'm trying to think. So let's talk about the edges and hindrances that you guys have taken. So let me start this way. Does anybody have an edge or a hindrance that they would not want to share with the group?
That they would not want to share with everyone?
Yeah, like something that's
Okay.
It's there, but you wouldn't necessarily, like, you would purposely try to hide it, or you would purposely try to downplay it. No? Okay. So as far as edges go, let's talk about the edges that you guys took and what they do, what they mean, because I think some of our audience might not be familiar with Savage Worlds, and so edges are awesome. And so let's talk a little bit about what those edges are and how they help you. So so it looks like I'm gonna have to sort out this server issues. Hang on. So anyway, yeah. So you guys should know what edges you took. Let's just talk about what you took. So let's start with JT. JT, what edges did you take?
Well, because I'm combining them, I put in a whole bunch here, and I have to narrow it down and get rid of some. But I can talk through the ones that I have selected that I'm going to narrow down, okay? So for my face guy, I had noble, and very attractive, because I'm just boosting that charisma as high as possible for those charisma rolls. But for the leader side, I was picking like natural leader, command, and luck, because I could get more bennies and I could pass those out, as well as everybody would have a +1, I think, to get back from being injured or shaken or something. So we can go through this. So attractive just adds charisma. And charisma is a stat that it only builds through edges and hindrances typically. So it's kind of a hard one to build up. But attractive, very attractive, and noble all give a +2. And so I have a +6 at the start. And noble also kind of comes with the filthy rich edge as a freebie, but with some extra responsibility. In this case, being a captain of a crew kind of makes sense. Being a noble kid, like I said, they were trying to maybe get rid of me, or I'm trying to get rid of them, but maybe my connections, daddy plays golf for the CEO, whatever. I've been kind of put into this officer position, maybe without quite earning it. So
would you want people to know about your heritage?
Yeah, I wouldn't care.
So not like under an assumed name or anything like that?
No, wouldn't care at all. Matter of fact, I would use it to get my way sometimes if need be.
Yeah, just try that off your character. Yeah. Alien, like,
no, and that's why I liked your character. Right. No, but so like, say in school, really pissing off an instructor, and then be like, do you really want to kick me out? My daddy owns a dealership, kind of BS. But no, with the crew, I wouldn't pull that at all with y'all. It's more of getting our crew better things, making those connections. And so with the leadership, I was also looking at the connect issues. So maybe not all starters or the ships that go out have certain things, but we want those certain things. Now I start pulling strings with the connections that I have to get those things done, which is a different edge completely. So that's kind of what I was looking at. But now I just have to narrow down how I want to combine these two characters into one. See if I want to start out super high charisma, or maybe knock it back a notch and pick up a leadership skill. But I'm looking at, or just pick leadership skills as it goes. But with the leadership skills of Lucky, gives an extra beanie, so I'd have 4 to start, and then with the, I think it's natural leader, I could hand those out to y'all, so y'all could use them. So,
That would be cool.
Very,
Like you can take pretty good charisma and still be able to like give that stuff out and support the party, which is the main thing. You know, leader means buff the rest of the party.
right. That's where I'm tying. Like, how do I want to? The charisma, all those are backgrounds, and so that's one of the things that I believe is a background edge can only be taken at character creation. Correct me if I'm wrong.
No, that's correct. So, so a background edge is definitely a character creation. The other thing to bear in mind is that charisma has actually been removed from the Adventure Edition, and it's been replaced by some other edges that give you specific bonuses to the circumstance. So when we ultimately get there, and I don't know when the Adventure Edition rules are going to be fully rolled into Fantasy Grounds, but we'll make the necessary changes at that point to account for that. But for right now, we're playing under the Deluxe Edition rules, which have charisma, and so as a result, you can use all those charisma-based things.
Okay, and so I needed, if I want to stay with a high charisma, I kind of need to take some of that start because of background, where I can grow into the leadership abilities, because those are like professional edges. So that's kind of what I'm thinking, but we'll see. Like I said, I still am working the merger of these characters to see what I like. Like I said, I might meet in the middle somewhere. It might not be so charismatic. I might just tone it down a notch. We'll see.
Like music starts playing every time you talk. It's just like that's just overkill.
Yeah.
He has his own theme song.
I did give Beatbox 9000 for a reason. I'm just saying.
Karaoke night. I get no sleep. No sleep.
It's coded that every time I enter the room, he plays epic music.
Yeah.
Sorry.
The Emperor's theme.
Nice. So Greg, you were saying you took which ones?
Boom.
I took a edge called Rocket Jock. I know that maybe the system we're on that might not have the greatest weapons ever, but if we ever were in a ship that was armed to the teeth, I can fire one weapon system per action without the multi-action penalty occurring. So, like, if we have like 4 weapon systems or something like that, I think that means I can fire each of them off without having to use 4 separate actions. Just, cool things. I'm sort of imagining my guy with his hand all over the control and everything like that, sort of just a blur of action when piloting and shooting at the same time. Should be a lot of fun.
I have a question about that.
Piloting and shooting, so I had to do both. Yeah.
So your race gives you the ability to ignore the multi-action thing? Do you need both?
No, this is the edge that I took. My race gives me an additional action per round at no penalty, so that's cool.
Oh, okay, so it's one more action. Okay,
I have throwing, and you can throw one thing in each arm with one action, I think.
That's
I'll
correct.
Just double check that. So
Yeah,
4 arms,
correct.
I should be able to like throw 4 knives really quickly, just like that.
Yeah, so let's talk about actions and multi-action penalties and what they mean real quick, just so that I can summarize that for you guys. So on your turn, you can do as many things as you want, right? So you guys probably say, wait a second, how does that even work? But for each thing you do, so you can move and shoot. But for so movement is kind of its own thing, okay? But you can like for example, you could shoot 3 times in a round, right? The first shot would be with no penalty. The second shot would be at a -2. Or sorry, no, I'm sorry. If you tell me you're going to shoot 3 times, you got to tell me I'm going to shoot 3 times, because each one of those shots is at a -6. So it's 2 + 2 + 2. I'm sorry, -4. I apologize. So the first shot would be 0 penalty. right? The second shot would be a -2, but it applies to all of the actions, right? So if you want to shoot twice, then both of your shots get a -2. Because if you think about it, like, you know, if I'm gonna pop off 2 rounds, I'm not gonna be as accurate as I would if I popped off a single round, right? Because I'm gonna try to shoot quickly. So and
You
then,
haven't seen me shoot.
so if you do 3, for example, then that's at a -4. But you know, you can also do something called taking the aim action. So for example, you could aim and shoot. And so this will all be in the book, and we'll talk a little bit about it. But you guys should look into the aim action. Because that's something that you're probably going to want to do. I mean, you can shoot normally, but if you aim, you actually get a +2 to your shot, right? But that should be something that you do kind of independent of other things, right? Because it kind of balances, it kind of counterbalances, right? Aiming and shooting is basically the same as just shooting if you don't do it ahead of time. Like, so if you do it in the previous round, like I'm going to aim, and then on the next round I take my shot. Now my shot is a +2. You understand what I'm saying? Because I've taken the time to aim. So I would suggest you guys look into that stuff. But you can, like I said, you can do as much as you want, and I'll tell you what that translates to in terms of penalties. So if you've got a multi-action penalty, there might also be some environmental conditions, which I mentioned before, right? So like, if the ship is in the middle of like a high G maneuver, then your guys are going to be on, what I would consider an unstable platform, which means that any actions that are taken on an unstable platform are going to get a -2. Unless you're strapped in. If you're strapped into your chair, then cool. But if you're up and about and the ship is like, doing evasive maneuvers, then you're going to have a problem, because that's going to take some extra effort, right? So if you are, our medical robot, for example, and you're trying to, to attend to somebody who's down on the ground and the ship is under evasive maneuvers, well, that's unstable, and you're going to have to figure out a way, to compensate for that.
I have a black belt in 0G martial arts.
Yeah, so 0G is a good example as well, right? Because that's also kind of an unstable platform situation. Now, for 0G situations, there are magnetic boots that are available. But if you're exploring an asteroid, your suit, so you're not going to magnetize to the asteroid unless it's primarily made of iron. So you're going to most likely be in a 0G situation. So 0G situations are going to have an effect on, your rolls. So operating in 0G is something to be aware of. So any questions on kind of how we take actions? What like if we want to give me a practical situation, then let's talk about it. I'd rather try to get anything that would be perceived as questionable out tonight before we get into tomorrow. But I could explain to you exactly how it would work. So I know, Greg, you brought up the throwing stuff. We could talk about how that would impact your character. So why don't you kind of lay out the circumstance for me? So, your race is Callian, yeah? And you
Sorry. I'm listening to you on the stream, so I might be a little bit delayed, but yeah.
Oh yeah, the stream's delayed.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Sure. Go ahead.
I would sort of run us through.
Repeat what you just said. My bad.
I will, Greg. I guess Tiderian had a question real quick, so let me.
Well,
take
it's sort
his
of
and
like
then I'll get back to you.
it's just a question about, I guess, a simulated encounter. Step it through. There's a free action, an action.
Yeah, so primarily free action is going to be like talking or pointing or or something like that. Something that is
Tossing a grenade.
not a free action.
Yeah.
That's an action. So basically the way the way an encounter is going to work, and this is a pretty broad question. Actually, if you don't mind, let me just get back to Greg's situation real quick, and then
Okay.
I'll circle back to like how an encounter would work, if that's cool. So Greg, what I was asking is, on your character, you're a Callian, right?
Yes.
Which gives you the additional action racial ability. So you get one extra non-movement action per round at no multi-action penalty, right? So in your particular situation, throwing one thing is an action. Okay. All right. So that means you could throw two things with no penalty. If you throw a third thing, then all of your throws are at a -2. You understand what I'm saying?
Right. No, that makes sense. I thought I read something about it, which made me decide to try out throwing. I'll see if I can find the specific language that I saw about it. It was sort of like, each item that you have in your hand is a thing, and I thought, oh, that would be really useful if I had 4 hands. It says here, the rate of fire of a thrown attack is 1 per hand, so a human character could throw 2 items. Suffering at once, suffering the usual multi-action and offhand penalties. Okay,
Yep,
so you're right.
Yep. So
although I could, it might be useful to sort of, I could hold two-handed weapons, shotgun and shotgun. That'd be cool.
Yeah. Or you could do, 2 pistols, and
Right.
and you could do that plus have 2 hands free to do something else. So the archetype image that I saw for a Callian was a pistol in each hand and 2 katanas.
I saw that on the thing.
So that was pretty cool.
The traits that I took, they do have the thing is the race has a frail things which subtracts from their toughness, and then I took an anemic hindrance as well, which makes me a little bit weaker to hazards and poisons and disease and things like that. So the katanas would probably be there for display, but maybe sort of a lighter kind of thing that might be something that I could throw
A shield.
in. A shield. 2 shields. Yeah. Double the protection. But yeah, maybe something that I could throw in an emergency situation or some sort of backup thing. But I'm not sure it would be like katanas or like something to bludgeon or something that's supposed to be like up close.
Yeah, I mean, it could also be operating your, engineering handheld, right? So you can use your engineering handheld to interface with other things, right? So not just your ship, right? You could also use it to try to hack things. There's a bunch of things that you can do with your engineering handheld. So that's something to bear in mind, right? So like, you've got your 2 pistols, but you've also got your other 2 hands kind of manipulating your handheld, right? Whether it's controlling a vehicle or whatever, right? I mean, there's a bunch of situations where it would make sense for you to use
piloting
those
through
things.
FTL while people are coming and attacking me, so I have to blam while the other 2 hands are like on the controls.
No doubt.
Yeah, totally.
I could see that.
Pretty useful. Or like pouring drinks with the other hand, like clearly.
Yeah.
Could be.
Knocking back shots. Like,
I can drink and drive.
Yeah, I mean,
Look,
you
all my
wouldn't-
hands are off the wheel.
You wouldn't suffer
we
the
did
same.
specify this is for mature audiences only. I mean,
Yeah. So that said,
I'll be right back.
Hard
guys.
Bushido mentions providing cover fire with thrown weapons, or grenade spam. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, Luck Me 10 said grenade spam, so that's something to think about as well. Going back to the how does combat work conversation. So the way we would enter an encounter is in Fantasy Grounds you use cards as for initiative. So you don't roll initiative. All right. So basically what happens is I pass out cards virtually with Fantasy Grounds, and then you go in the order of the card that you've received. Right. So basically, king beats queen, 10 beats 5, stuff like that, right? There's also the concept of suit. So if you get two matching cards, those matching cards will whoever has the higher suit will go, and you deal those cards every round, right? So because we're playing on a virtual tabletop, it's actually pretty easy. I mean, the cards just get passed out. You can imagine this would be a little bit more cumbersome at the table, but actually it plays pretty fast. So I've played it at the table. I usually just kind of deal the cards out next to me. But the other thing that's really cool is jokers, right? So we've got a setting rule that's in effect, which is called Joker's Wild, right? Whenever anybody gets a joker, everybody gets a Benny, right? So that's pretty awesome. There are 4 jokers in the deck, and then if you have a joker, you naturally go to the top of the kind of initiative order, but you can take your turn at any time. You can interrupt another person's turn, right? So so based on that joker, you have the choice of acting at any time. In addition, all of your actions that turn get a +2. So getting a joker is awesome. It definitely it definitely is a moment that you guys will celebrate, because not only does it mean a Benny for everybody, but it also means somebody is going to get to do something really cool.
Cool.
So that's how it works with the jokers. So that should be a lot of fun when that happens. Any questions on initiative and jokers? Okay. So after we've done the initiative and everybody's in order, it works very similar to any other kind of tabletop role-playing game, in that you're going to, everybody's going to take a turn doing what they want. There'll be some kind of enemy. There'll be, you'll position yourself. So if you look at your character sheet, you will have a value in pace. Okay, so that pace will be the number. So if you think about it, it's each one of those represents 5 feet, right? So in the case of most characters, your pace is going to be 6, unless for some reason your character has some reason why it would have a different pace. But pace of 6 equals 30 feet. Right, which is pretty standard for fantasy games, as the standard move speed. But then you can choose to run, and if you run, you can move your pace, but you roll your pace die. So if you look at your pace, there's also a run die, okay, and that's how many more paces you can move, right? So you get a D6, and then you say, oh well, I'm gonna make a run for it. So you clearly get your 30 feet, but you roll your run die, and then you add that run die to your pace, and that equals the total amount you can move with a run action. So I'm getting a lot of keyboard clacking. No,
it's some mechanical keyboard, yeah.
Mr. Martinez, yeah.
JT and his magical mechanical keyboard. Anyway, so
No, it's not.
I type with purpose.
So,
Yeti, big thumbs.
So let me just make sure you guys understand what I'm saying.
Yeti.
All right. So what I'm saying is you will, so if you say I want to run, okay, you're gonna get your pace by default. All right. That's just a move action. So if you just want to move your pace, that's just a move action. But if you want to run, you actually roll that run die and you add to it, and that says how far you actually make it beyond your pace. Right. So, for example, if I have a pace of 6 and I roll my run die and I only get a 1, right? Then that means I move 35 feet with a run action. You understand what I'm saying? So if I roll my pace die and I get a 6, then I move another 30 feet, which means I've moved a total of 60 feet, which means I really ran, I got far. But if you think about it like a in D&D, for example, it's what is it called? It's dash. Sorry, it's called a dash. So if you take a dash action in D&D, it's equivalent to this, except for you don't automatically move at double your speed. You move at your speed plus your run die. So some of you will get a bonus to your running based on a couple of factors, but that's the speed at which you run. So any questions on running and pace? Okay, so
real quick, diagonals, is that a thing? As far as, like...
it is, but when we get into a gridded map, the movement is standard, so 5 by 5, so any direction is going to be 5 feet. I don't want it to be messy. So let's talk about parry and toughness. Okay, so your parry value is what it takes to hit you. Right? So how difficult are you to hit? Right? So, and that's with a melee attack. So with a ranged attack, it's always 4. Always 4. Right? So, obviously you got situational penalties, somebody's in cover, this is going on, that's going on. But, if you're out in the open, 2 people a reasonable distance apart based on the range of the weapon, it's 4. Right, 4 is the number you need. In melee, you want to hit somebody with a sword. Well, you got to beat their parry. Okay, so then doing damage. So doing damage, you have to beat their toughness. Okay, and so so when you look at the toughness value is going to have kind of 2 numbers associated with it. So you have your base toughness, which would probably be like 4, 5, 6, 7, depending on a couple of your attributes. But then when you add armor, it'll add to your toughness, right? So for example, a spacesuit equals 1 armor. So if you have a toughness of 5, you're wearing a spacesuit. Now your toughness is 6, which means when I roll damage, I've got to exceed a 6 to even punch through your armor or to do enough physical damage to affect you. So let's say that happens, right? So I shoot, I hit, and then I roll my damage die and I get an 8. Okay, so I get an 8 on my damage. If what I'm trying to hit toughness was 5, then I hit and I was successful. But so that triggers a condition called shaken. Okay, so let's talk about shaken. So shaken is basically like so just to kind of let you think about it, like a grazing wound or something like that, right? Or like a ricochet or something like that. Something it doesn't cause any damage, but you look down and you see now I've been nicked or something's happened and I'm shaken up as a result, right? That's shaken. But I didn't do enough to cause a wound. Okay. So when you're shaken, really all you can do is move and try to unshake. Okay? So how do you unshake? Well, you unshake with a vigor roll. All right? So you would roll your vigor, all right? And you have to exceed a 4. Right? So if you roll a vigor roll and you exceed a 4, you're good to go. You're no longer shaken and you can act normally. It's like stunned. All right, so if you think about like a D&D condition, it would be like stunned, okay? However, if let's say I get shaken by one enemy, right, and then another enemy comes and rolls an 8 as well, now I'm already shaken. Well, guess what? Now I've suffered a wound. Okay, and so that's kind of the way it goes. Now, so you guys, you only have 4 wounds before you're dead. Okay, and wounds are cumulative, right? So when you have a wound, right, 1 wound, all of your rolls are at a -1. The same situation occurs with fatigue, but we'll talk about fatigue in a little bit, or when the situation comes up. But when you have a wound, all of your rolls are made at a -1. Okay, so it's a bad thing to have a wound. All right. So you say, okay, well, all right, so shaken and wounds, that kind of sucks. How do I deal with that? Well, so if you ever want to unshake, all you gotta do is drop a Benny. You drop a Benny, you're no longer shaken, right? So let's say something happens, you drop a Benny, there you go. And once you drop that Benny, you're no longer shaken. Now, you can also do what's called soaking wounds, okay? So if you've gotten a wound, you can use a Benny to make a vigor roll to try to soak that wound. So basically, if you soak a wound, it's like it never happened, right? So you drop that Benny, you make your soak roll, which is that vigor roll, and if you're successful, right? So if you get a 4 or higher on your soak roll, you remove that wound. If you get a raise, and a raise is rolling 4 above the target number, okay? So let's say I have to roll to soak a wound. I get an 8. Now, not only was I successful in soaking the wound, but I'm also no longer shaken. You understand what I'm saying? So I know this is where we get a little bit crunchy, and so for those of you that are unfamiliar, this is an area you might want to read up on. Now, in terms of how healing works, I mean, there's no, so healers will make, a healing check, and then, if they're successful in that healing check, they will remove a wound. If they get a raise, they can remove 2 wounds, 2 raises, 3 wounds, 4 raises, 4 wounds. Right? So that's the way it goes. There's no magic healing in the traditional sense. So, I mean, it's not like, oh, I'm going to get healed and, the cleric pops in and casts a heal spell and all of a sudden everybody's happy-dappy, right? That's not the way it works. Once you've been healed, you can't be healed again, right, until the next day. So you really want to be careful about that. Right? Because if you think about it, like, all right, if I'm a medic, right, you get shot, I come up and bandage up your wounds, I dress them up. If I come back 5 minutes later and dress them again, you're not going to get any better, right? Now you just got a cleaner band-aid, right? So the only thing that heals those wounds longer term is natural healing, and so you basically heal a wound basically per day, right? So you want to just be careful about getting wounds, because like I said, it'll happen from time to time, and sometimes you'll find yourself with 2-3 wounds, but that's a dire situation, right? Because now you're making all your rolls at a -2, -3, and even those vigor rolls to soak those wounds, they're still made with that -2, -3 penalty. So just bear that in mind. So any questions on wounds?
So it's definitely better to heal someone else than try to heal yourself.
I mean,
or get someone to heal you. Because they don't have the negatives from the wounds.
If you already have wounds, you're going to suffer a penalty to try to heal yourself. Yes. So if that is an option, then yes, you definitely want somebody else to try to heal you.
Don't worry, ma'am. I'm a skilled medic. I will heal you.
So any questions on wounds, soaking, shaken condition, or any of that stuff that I just talked about?
So just to clarify, the same action that you use to soak a wound, if successful, will also get rid of your shaken status. If you get rid of the wound, you're also no longer shaken?
If you get a raise on your soak roll. Right, so by default, okay, like if you soak the wound, so let me say it this way: if you successfully soak the wound, it never happened, so you were never shaken in the first place anyway. If you've already got a wound and you use a healing check, right, to try to eliminate the wound, you will remove the number of wounds based on the number of successes. But if that character is shaken, they are still shaken unless you get a success or a raise above the number of wounds that they have. You understand what I'm saying? Or they are successful to unshake with a vigor roll, or they drop a Benny. I mean, there's a bunch of different situations. So again, I know some of you guys are relatively new to the system, and I'm not gonna, like, it's not like we're gonna just have this conversation and I expect you to be experts. I don't. As we play, we'll talk about the situation and I'll lay out your options.
A lot of it's automated anyway, like off the whatever effects.
Yeah, so with Fantasy Grounds, that's one of the things, Ikeel is the guy who created the Savage Worlds rule set, for Fantasy Grounds, and I mean it's awesome, right? So it's got a lot of automation in there already. Like for example, if you do not use a Benny to unshake, it's gonna come up and you can set it to automatically do that. So there's just a bunch of stuff in there. It'll also prompt you if you want to soak, and stuff like that. So a lot of this will work out. Like you won't necessarily need me to remind you, but I will be there to remind you if the situation comes up. So any questions on wound, soaking, any of the stuff we just talked about?
I don't think so.
All right, cool. So
That was charisma.
charisma. Sorry, what was that? Was that a question?
Nope. Take your follow along.
Okay. So that kind of explains the interactions, with hitting and damage and all that other stuff. There is also the concept of a kind of a fumble, I guess, or a critical failure. Okay. So anytime you roll like as a wild card, anytime you roll 2 1s, so you're going to roll your trait die, right? So like your fighting die and your wild die. If you get snake eyes, for example, if you got D6s, that's something bad's going to happen. The extent to which that bad thing happens, I'll let you know, but just understand it'll happen from time to time, and it could be bad for you guys. So other than that, does everybody understand their skills? Any questions on skills or using skills that I can answer for you? I mean, I think it's pretty clear. I guess my recommendation as a kind of veteran Savage Worlds player and GM is don't try to build the jack of all trades, because you're just going to run out of skill points. You can't possibly take all the skills, right? Now that I mention it, or now that I'm thinking about it, everybody has the knowledge computers and knowledge. So everybody gets knowledge computers at a D4 by default for free, right? So everybody go ahead and take that. So everybody go ahead and
Knowledge
take,
and what else?
knowledge computers at a D4 by default, okay? And the other one is like knowledge communications at a D4. So everybody's going to basically know how to work their communications gear, and they're going to have a rough idea of what, like basic communication systems are. So what I equate this to is like the modern person has a at least knows what a computer is and generally how to operate one, in today's day and age, as well as when you talk about knowledge communications is going to be for like operating your comm link or operating the communication system on a ship. This is just general knowledge that pretty much everybody has. I equate it to being able to use a cell phone. So all of you guys get that by default. You do not have to spend skill points to get that, and it's a D4 by default. If you have additional skill points, you can feel free to raise those. They may come
have a
in
lot of
handy for
skill
some
points
people.
in knowledge computers already. So if everybody gets a D4, should I bump that to?
Yes, increase it
one
one
extra
rank if you've already taken it.
Oh shit. Okay, I'll have to put one in somewhere else because that would make me go above my smart level. What it already does.
Should do it.
I guarded,
Spend two points to get it above if you have an extra.
so I'll take a couple more.
Okay.
May as well take one in communication.
So those are kind of the general skills that people know. Who is the pilot? Who is going to act as the pilot? Is that going to be you, Greg?
That's gonna be me.
You're also going to get knowledge astronavigation at a D4
Okay.
by default, and you can.
It is D4. Okay.
Yeah, you can change it.
You're gonna take. Yeah, I'll take astronavigation instead of computers because that's what I kind of wanted anyway.
Okay. So you're going to get astronavigation by default. Somebody else, so one of you other guys should get it. Probably, I don't know, maybe maybe Brayden, maybe you should get astronavigation as well. Or JT, sorry. One of you guys, one other member of the group should get astronavigation as a D4. I think it would probably make sense for one of you other guys to have it, just in case.
Yeah, JT.
Okay, so JT, give yourself knowledge astronavigation at a D4. And then if you want to manipulate your skills, you can make it higher. So let's see. So let me tell you about dramatic tasks. Okay. So dramatic task is something where, like, you know, I'll use the standard trope, right? You know, there's a bomb and it's going to go off, and you've got to make repair rolls to try to defuse the bomb before it goes off. Okay. So the way it works is you've got to make a minimum of 3 successes, and so I will tell you how many successes you need over how many attempts. Okay? So a success is simply rolling a 4, right? So if you're trying to defuse a bomb, you're going to make a repair roll, okay? And so you other guys can aid if you have a skill that you think, and you can explain to me how you would use that skill to aid the person trying to defuse it. But you would roll. So let's say your repair die is a D10. Okay, I'll give you an example, or a D8. Okay, so if I wind up rolling an 8 on my repair die, not only do I ace, which means I get to roll it again, right? So let's say my total roll was a 12. Okay, so my total roll is a 12. That means I got 3 successes in the first try. You understand? Because 4 succeeds, 8 is the first raise, and then 12 is the second raise. You understand what I'm saying? So for each raise above the target number, you get an additional success. So what I'll say to you is, okay, for this dramatic task, you need to have 3 successes in 5 rolls. Right? And so, you know, so basically you go like, you know, you would make whatever skill checks are required. You guys can assist with skills that you have that you think might, you know, so for example, a dramatic task might be chasing. Well, no, chase is bad, but you could do a dramatic task as a chase, right? Let's say you're chasing another ship and it requires very precise navigation, right? So, you know, so you would make a series of piloting rolls, and those piloting rolls could be assisted by others, okay? And you'd have to get a certain number of successes in a certain number of rolls. Otherwise, the ship that you're chasing gets away. Okay, so that's the concept of dramatic task. Do you guys have any questions about that? So circumstance, you know, so there might be circumstantial penalties that are figured in, right? You know, it's a smoky room, it's dark, whatever. These are all the things that could influence the rolls, right? So, you know, so instead of just a, you know, like a sunny day diffusing a bomb in the middle of a field of daisies, right? You know, you're probably going to face some challenges doing it, right? So you might have a -2 or a -4 or even a -6 to your rolls to try to be successful for that dramatic task. So, so any question on dramatic tasks? You guys are a lively bunch. So, so now there's also chases, and we'll talk about chases when we get to them. But chases, you know, a traditional chase involves there you go. A traditional chase involves mechanical keyboards. So it involves a series of card draws. So everybody gets everybody gets dealt a certain number of cards based on some factors, and then the outcome. So what you get to do is determined by the card draw. So I'll explain chases when we get there. I don't know how many chases we're gonna have, or if I'll just primarily handle chases as dramatic tasks, because the chase rules are kind of they're still a work in progress. But primarily, I prefer to handle chases as dramatic tasks because it allows everybody to collaborate a little bit more, in my opinion. But we'll figure that out. So I don't know. Is there anything else anybody has questions on? I mean, I'm happy to wrap up a little early tonight. I know people have work. This is our first session, so let me just get any questions that you guys may have.
A whole bunch.
So I don't necessarily have any questions, but I'm having an extremely hard time hearing you speak. Everyone else is coming in crystal clear.
I've basically been watching the stream for the last few minutes just because your voice is coming through really clear on there, but like coming through to the VC voice chat, it was just really bad.
Okay. All right. So so we'll get together and we'll talk through any voice related challenges we have before next session. But I was just asking if anybody had any questions because I think we'll probably get set to wrap up here and talk through some more of this maybe in in our offline. But I think we're pretty much good to go for session 1. Does anybody have anything before we go that they would say, oh, I'm just not ready because of something that they want to handle on the chat?
I think I'm pretty ready, and I'll probably maybe see how the flow goes. Some of the things you described tonight. We'll probably see those mechanics in play, and then it'll probably be more like aha, and then.
Yeah, I would imagine that. So when we're actually playing, especially the first couple sessions, I'll talk you guys through anything that that is unclear or is difficult. Greg's played with me before Savage Worlds. He has familiarity with the system. You could tell him how long it took you to get up to speed on Savage Worlds. I'd probably say under an hour in the first session, and and the basics were hammered out.
Well, I don't want to equate my situation because I'm insanely smart.
and incredibly humble.
Why does that get such a lot? No. No, it is super.
And extremely humble too. It's amazing.
The most humble person in the world, absolutely. But he's right. It is really easy to pick up, and I'm not really worried about anything. But I do want to make sure that what my character is expected to do, I don't want to be ending up. We have our own kind of ideas in mind, and I think the main thing is we don't want to run into a situation early on where we're like, oh, I'm supposed to have that skill because I didn't have astronavigation, but you let me know, and now I have it, and tweak my skills around a little bit, so I'm good in that. I'm still pretty okay in the communications in case something goes wrong there, repair. I got a good set of skills, I think, and I think I'm okay, and should be able to do what I want my character to do. But I think that's the most important thing to me.
Yeah, I can relate to that. It's a good point.
Yeah, so what I'm gonna do, just kind of following this, is I'm gonna look through all the characters and and just kind of add up all the numbers, make sure everything looks good, make sure there's no glaring misses in terms of things that people are gonna need, just based on the setting, and so I'll circle back with you guys individually if I see something on your character sheet that we need to just schedule some time to talk about or whatever. But we can absolutely collaborate on the Discord, on any of that stuff. But I feel pretty good about where we landed tonight. I think we touched on a lot of the key points. I don't know if there's anything kind of major that was missed. Obviously, for our first session, we fought through some technology challenges, and we really appreciate the audience sticking with us. Hopefully everybody's enjoyed the show. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to at this point everybody kind of say goodbye to the crowd. We'll see you guys all next week, and I am going to kick back over to the DM only screen here, or GM only screen here, for a second. If you guys wouldn't mind just sticking around for just a minute, and I will give our outro. So I appreciate it, guys, and I'll see you back in a minute. All right, so now I'm back to the GM only screen again. I can't thank you guys enough for hanging out with us. and really enjoyed having some collaboration from the audience. And I'm really looking forward to next week. So hopefully catch you guys all next week. And with that, that is going to wrap up Gamma Quadrant for this evening. Again, we really appreciate it, and we'll see you guys all next week.